In comes Kenny S. Oh my god, Kenny! Shy's still gonna be soaking. Root comes down, damage goes through. Jackie's able to find two big kills! Jackie Love just found everybody!
Man, these clips literally give me goosebumps, even when I'm just rewatching them. Watching world-class professional players' star performances is always so exciting, but is their prowess really the only thing at play here? Today, we explore the two different ways competitors bring value to the team they play for, and why quote-unquote role players are not just a supporting cast of star players. If I asked you if Faker is a star or a role player for T1, you would probably all agree that he's a star player. This is not a surprise since he's won Worlds 5 times and is probably the most recognizable and decorated name in esports, but I will argue that while he is indeed a star in the scene, he competes as perhaps the greatest role player we have ever seen. I want to first disassociate the qualification of role and star players with the performance of players, since I believe it has nothing to do with how well someone is playing, but rather how they provide their value to their teams. There can be MVP role players and conversely, underwhelming star players. I will therefore be renaming those two concepts into enablers and multipliers. I really want to shine some light on the under-celebrated players, so I will begin with the carries. The first thing I want to rectify about carries is what these players are carrying, which, contrary to popular belief, is not their bad teammates. Carry players are teammates who carry the resources of the team. Believe me, there are plenty of terrible carry players out there. I also want to talk a bit about resources.
We require more minerals.
Resources are everything that you can take away from your team and turn into an advantage. The most obvious form of resource is money, but it also includes things like counterpick priority, ult orbs, time on the ball, etc. These resources can be as small as defusing the bomb, and as large as having the 4 other players draft around you, giving you all the money, and waiting for you to carry them. When you are receiving a lot of resources from your team, and are able to perform better than the average player with those same resources, you are multiplying the value of what you are receiving, and hence a multiplier. Different star players require different resources to be optimal, which makes each carry player's playstyle unique to them. We often notice these players the most since they often will have very high impact on the game, which makes their play flashy, exciting, and game deciding. When they win, they are celebrated as geniuses, praised for their abilities to shoulder the responsibilities of achieving victory, and carrying not only the resources, but also the hopes of their 4 teammates. However, when they lose, they tank a huge amount of criticism and pressure from the spectators and teammates alike. After all, if you are to take all these resources from your team, you better make it worth it. It is one of the highest pressure roles to play where the highs are high, but the lows are also very low. The division in resources in team games is especially apparent when there are designated roles and positions for each player. AD carry literally has the word carry in the name, and the players are well known to be the most egotistical and resource-demanding players out there. Meanwhile, the support role is made for players who give all their resources to the team and contribute with the little they have. But I would like to separate the idea of enablers and multipliers from the roles they choose to play. I will argue that you are a multiplier if you take more resources than you are meant to receive. To demonstrate this, I will showcase a superstar support player who often takes more resources than a support is meant to receive and multiplies them to have absurd performances. I am, of course, talking about T1 Keria. Even if it is very irritating watching him 3-0 my favorite team last year, he is arguably the best support in the world, and he competes in probably the most unusual way, as an extremely resource-demanding player, often taking counterpick and having the entire team draft around his individual mechanics. And he's not even hiding it. He was literally picking ADCs as supports. When T1 does not play to carry a strengths as a multiplying support, they lost an MSI where they were the heavy favorites to win. But where do those resources come from? After all, they are scarce.
We require more Vespine gas.
If everyone only takes resources, they will start to compete for the same resources, creating anti-synergy. There should be players whose focus is to only give resources away and enable. I define enablers as players who excel when they allow other players on the team to take their resources, aka enable them. These are competitors who bring their value to the team by maintaining a positive impact while on a resource deficit. Little Tommy the top laner might be completely useless, if not a dead weight, if he gets counterpicked, weak-sided by his jungler, camped by the enemy jungler, and goes 0-10 in lane. But if a player were to be able to give these resources away and still have an extremely positive impact on the game, he'd be easily one of the best top laners of all time.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
You might think that these players have less pressure to display good performance, but that could not be further from the truth. Games are designed for players to have agency even with low resources. Some characters have designs which allow them to function on lower investments, and at the top level, professional enablers are pushing their influence in the game to the absolute maximum, and those thinking that giving away resources relieves them of responsibility will very quickly realize that they will be outclassed by those who have the opposite mentality. Baus's playstyle is literally to draw the attention of the entire enemy team to him, enabling an immense amount of space and tempo for his team. These results cannot be accomplished by someone who is just waiting to be carried. However, since Baus is celebrated plenty, I wanted to shine some light on a personal favorite of mine who does not get the recognition he deserves. Similarly to the multiplier section, I will pick an enabling player who is representing a carry role. Damwon's world champion ADC, Ghost. 2020 Damwon was something else completely. Easily one of the most dominant teams to ever win Worlds. Between the prime of Showmaker, Nuggery, and Canyon, this team was essentially unrivaled that year. The prowess of the solo laners and the jungler are still talked about to this very day. But to my eyes, Ghost is the ADC that made it all possible. Despite playing a carry role, he was often absorbing immense amounts of pressure for his team, sacrificing his own performance to enable his teammates. Similar to Keria, he redefined what it meant to be an ADC and was easily the perfect teammate for maximum synergy. Obviously, it is impossible to be purely an enabler or a multiplier. These two terms exist as two ends of a spectrum, where players compete on the enabling side or the multiplying side. Different players give and take different resources, which makes everyone's playstyle unique to themselves. Most games and teams will require that you are able to adapt your playstyle to match the current meta. At the top level, meta is far more important. Teams that win championships are those who understand it the best. If, as a player, you are unable to adapt to the meta, requiring you to slide to the other side of the spectrum, you will very quickly become a liability for your team. Synergy between two players occurs when the resources one player enables is the resource the other player multiplies. Basic synergies will happen simply with how the roles are assigned, but great synergy between players is very rare. It is indeed possible for two star players to have synergy with each other, but it is less common than enablers having synergy with multipliers. A lot of super teams fail to meet expectations for this exact reason. A pop-off performance is not only created by the player's individual skills. Just because their teammate had less impact on the game itself does not mean another star player will perform better in that same role. teams that win are always the ones with the strongest synergies, not the strongest players. Keep this in mind the next time your ideal lineup looks like this. At the beginning, I claimed Faker competes as an enabler, yet manages to showcase a star performance almost every game he plays. He is a player who gives a lot to his team and performs as if he was the one receiving resources. It is as if he counted as 2 players, making every game versus T1 feel like a 6v5.
I'm honestly sick of Faker every year knocking out my favorite teams. It really is unfair, if you think about it. Why can't the other regions have a player like this that just wins them worlds every